Good afternoon, my turtle ducks. Just in time for tea. Please help yourself. I've got sugar and honey and cream or lemon, and we've got jam and butter for the tea cookies. Today, I'd like to follow up from our previous tea with appropriate behavior. The only things we truly have control over in this world are our own feelings and actions. As such, it's important to be as mindful as possible with both. The first thing to remember about appropriate behavior is, unfortunately, that it will change based on the situation. Appropriate behavior among peers in a relaxed situation is not the same as appropriate behavior in a classroom or professional setting. Fortunately, these behaviors are not expected to be innate. They are expected to be learned. Thus, if you are not familiar with the appropriate behavior of a given situation, I can almost guarantee that someone out there is willing to teach. It is important to make sure that the information you are receiving seems credible. If the person talking mentions degrading or demonizing another individual or group, that information may not be credible. It is also important to remember that the guide for what is appropriate will change over time, and sometimes can change quite rapidly. If someone you trust or believe to be well informed alerts you that a behavior is no longer appropriate, try not to take it as an attack. Feel free to double check the information, but be open to simply not having the correct information anymore. And of course, if you are in the middle of a situation and unsure of the proper protocol, feel free to ask someone more familiar with the etiquette than yourself. Remember our tea about conversations? People generally like to feel knowledgeable and generally like to help others. As long as you come from a place of genuine interest and curiosity, someone is sure to help you. Now, there will be times when we feel overcome, whether from emotion or sensory overload, and in those moments it will be much more likely for us to react rather than respond. This is likely to lead us to some fairly negative and perhaps worsened outcomes. So whenever possible, we should try to avoid this. The first step is to identify what behaviors, words, or situations send us into the heightened states of distress, and either work to avoid them as much as possible, or work with a professional on increasing our distress tolerance to protect us from the immediate negative effects. Next, we should try to remove ourselves from situations in which we feel we are rapidly approaching the limits of our distress. If you're in person, try to leave the situation. This may be more difficult, but it helps if you have set up a place you can retreat to ahead of time, even if it's just your car. For online spaces, this is much easier. Many social media websites give you the option to stop following a conversation or outright block someone, with the option to unblock later if you only need a short break. If you have reached your limit or are about to, try to remove yourself until you can calm back down, and do not engage until you have done so. It is important to remember that showing passion in an argument has been deemed losing, which is altogether an unhelpful framing, but not within the scope of this tea. So it is important to keep as calm as you can. If someone is antagonizing you, they are likely trying to get you angry to make you more likely to react and less likely to respond. In this same vein, it is important to remember that if someone is purposefully antagonizing you, and it is not simply a misunderstanding or miscommunication, it is important to ensure that there is some documentation of the lead up to this antagonization, particularly recordings or unaffiliated witnesses. Among remaining calm, remember that you are still allowed to enforce boundaries. If someone is being purposefully antagonistic, referencing points or situations unrelated to the topic at hand, speaking or behaving in a violent or threatening manner, it is perfectly acceptable to say, "I will not engage until X behavior stops," or "We're not working from the same framework, so I don't see a point in taking this further." Try to remain polite, but you do not have to continue engaging with purposefully antagonistic people. Now, let's look at our cohorts. It is important to remember that what is considered appropriate behavior will also change based on one's social standing. It is our responsibility to ensure that those of a generally marginalized social standing are allowed space to set up some of their own boundaries and behaviors. If someone is part of a marginalized community that we are not a part of, it is important to listen to them and abide by the boundaries and behavioral guidelines they use within their communities. Finally, once you are aware of the boundaries of an individual, particularly if you are close to them, it's a good idea to ask further questions such as, do you need help enforcing that boundary? And how can I help best? Some people are perfectly capable of enforcing their own boundaries with no assistance. Some people will appreciate encouragement and reminders, and some people with specific traumas or freeze responses may appreciate friends and loved ones stepping in to enforce a boundary for them. And remember, communication is key. If you have any specific questions related to this or other etiquette, please see my other videos or feel free to send me a message on Instagram or Telegram, and I will attempt to help. Well, I think that's all the time I have today. I should get back to work. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, be kind, my little turtle ducks, to others and to yourselves.